Hi, welcome to the Eat Better podcast. I'm Samira, your host and founder of the Heather app. Today we're talking to Dani Spies from the YouTube channel Clean and Delicious, which has over 2 million subscribers and 250 million views. And that is only counting YouTube and not other social platforms. Dani is passionate about teaching people how to cook and eat clean with whole ingredients. Her mission is to help you eat better, cook more, and relax on your journey to health, wellness, or weight loss. Dani is a mom, a food lover, a health and weight loss coach, a cookbook author, and founder of the Don't Diet. In this episode, we're going to get to know her a bit more close and personal, and in the process, get inspired to make changes to our diet in order to eat better. Coming up. Hi, Dani. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Oh, thanks for having me. So happy to be here.
Let's jump into it. So I saw on your YouTube channel you have 879 videos. I'm not sure if you were conscious, but that's
I'm
being
not.
that's like just demonstrates a level of passion about the subject of which you've dedicated yourself to: food, eating, like health, being health conscious. How did that passion come to be? Can you kind
Yeah,
of walk me through your
that's
journey?
sure. That's a great question. So honestly, much of it started because of my own journey with food and body many years ago when I was younger. I did struggle with my weight and struggled with like body image and trying to really build a healthy relationship with myself, with my body, and with food. So all of those different components. But like along with that, I also loved food, like from a culinary standpoint. So it was like this dichotomy of like I had a true passion for food. But then I also had these like health and body struggles. So I think just trying to unravel and understand that for myself throughout the years, that is what like drove a lot of my passion and brought me to the work that I do today. And it's very much what still fuels what I do because I just love the topic.
Do you remember how old you were when you first started to cook?
When I first started to cook, so I grew up in a house where my parents were always cooking. And it's
Okay.
funny, I didn't cook with them a ton when I was like super young, but once I became a teenager, I was cooking a lot. And then, that's when I began when I was a teenager. And once I like was a little bit older and moved out of my house, it was one of my favorite things to do. Still is one of my favorite things to do.
What type of dishes did your parents cook? What type of cuisines were in your household?
So I grew up, it was very much so an Italian kitchen, like classic American Italian dishes. My mom was Irish and German, but my dad was Italian. And my
Wow.
mom's two best friends were Italian. So she learned how to cook from her friends' moms and like dishes that my dad enjoyed. So our kitchen was pretty Italian.
Okay, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably have been to Italy. I went to Italy about 2 years ago and did like a tour and ate the food, and it's just paradise on earth.
That's amazing. I was there many years ago, and my daughter is 15 now, and I really want to bring her and my son, who's 13. I'm always like, wait, I keep trying to plant seeds in their brain that when they get a little older, they should go to Italy and do like culinary programs.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Um,
So we'll see.
so you said that your philosophy essentially evolved, right? Can you kind of talk about the evolution? What was it before, and then to where you are now? What's your philosophy towards food now?
So, tying back to what I was saying before, um, for many years when I was trying to kind of figure out food and having a healthy relationship with food, I was somebody who jumped on like every diet under the sun, like every
Mhm.
single diet. And I always struggled. Like it was like I never really found a good rhythm with any specific dietary approach. And then when I finally started to shift out of that, for me, it was the whole like clean eating concept. So for me, what I found to be really helpful was simply focusing on real whole foods as close to their natural state as possible most of the time. And I feel like the reason that worked so well for me is because it really shifted my brain from focusing on all the foods I thought I wasn't supposed to eat or couldn't eat or needed to remove. And it made me constantly be looking at all of these foods that I could incorporate, right? So I'm like, ooh, you know, eggplant, a rutabaga, just like fruits, vegetables, whole grains. Basically, I just started to look at food again in a way where it felt super abundant and fun. And so that for me was a big mental shift.
Why do you think so many people still, I guess, fall in the same pitfalls of like traditional diets, of like restriction, calorie counting, all these things that we know are not sustainable? Why do we keep doing them?
I think for multiple reasons. I think because the messaging is very loud. Um, the diet industry is very large and the voices are very loud. And I think that we're kind of unconditionally conditioned or no, what's the word I'm looking for? Not unconditionally. We're kind of like without ourselves,
Unconsciously?
unconsciously, thank you,
Yeah.
unconsciously conditioned to not trust ourselves and our body. And so you think that you need, somebody to tell you what to do or a plan to tell you what to do or how to eat. And I do believe that dietary approaches can be like if you're a newbie to nutrition and you don't understand, I do think that dietary guidelines can be a helpful tool. But what I see happens often, and I know I used to do this as well, is instead of taking this information as a guide and seeing what works and what doesn't, people tend to take it on like a religion, right? Like a dogma, like it's got to be perfect, it's got to be all the time. And then when we do that, we tend to disconnect from ourselves and our own feedback and our own internal wisdom to follow the rules, to do it right. And that's when I think it starts to get very disconnected and very hard to do, very unsustainable.
You know what I was thinking as you were talking about that? Like that essentially volleying of the conscious and unconscious. Like when you follow a diet someone else prescribes, you no longer have the task of like being mindful of your body and like what it wants. Cause like I reflect on times when I eat unhealthy. Eating unhealthy never feels good. Like if you actually listen to your body, like it satisfies an immediate craving for salt, oil, or whatever, sugar. But if you just listen to your body, but I feel like increasingly in our like device screen world, we're so not in tune with our bodies. And like food seems like it requires such an intimate connection, right? For it to be like a lifelong, sustainable, enjoyable like relationship, right?
Yeah, I think that's perfectly said. I agree with you. And I think sometimes we don't want the responsibility of
Yeah.
having to do that work. It's like and then the false belief comes on that if just give me the plan or tell me what to do, and then I'll
Yes.
just check the boxes. But it's like you can't do it without yourself, right? It only takes you
Yeah.
so far.
I'm just relating it to literally other doctrines in life, right? Where people just want someone else to tell them what to do when the proper answer is like whatever you pick has to be extremely custom to you and only you
Yeah.
know yourself. Yeah. It's
Yes.
very
This is so
difficult.
true.
So what philosophy do you set for your household? How do you communicate food to them so that they have a lifelong, sustainable, healthy relationship?
Well, I have teenagers now, so I can't say that I've really succeeded. Sometimes I'm like, what are you doing? Um, and I'm very whole food focused. I mean, I
Okay.
love cooking. We've always had family meals. I'm really big on meal prep. I'm also really big on encouraging my kids to, get in the kitchen and make their own food and their own meals. I will say, as they've gotten older, and you're exposed to so many foods in the world and what your friends are doing and what other people are serving, that it does get to a point I've learned where you really have to just hand the baton off, and now it's your journey to learn to make those decisions. Because I do think for like young kids, like especially teenagers, it's like the gift of the youth. There's no consequences in their minds for anything. So they
Yes.
definitely, sometimes I wouldn't, sometimes I look at their decisions and I'm like, I thought I did a better job than that. But it's all good. They have the core knowledge and they both know how to cook, so I'm excited about that.
That's good. That's actually an accomplishment itself, knowing how to cook. I feel like increasingly no one is self-sufficient in cooking anymore. Even when they cook, they have to like follow recipes
Yeah, I
meticulously and
agree.
they
It's a bit
just
of a lost art.
yeah, it's crazy. Hopefully we can somehow get back to it or maybe it's bygone. Okay. I want to talk about your channel. Why did you decide to create your channel, create this platform? What impact did you hope or continue to hope to make in like the lives of the people that watch you, rely on you?
So, when we first started the channel, it was actually very accidental in the sense that I was working one on one with clients. This was many years ago. And I would go to people's houses, because a lot of my clients wanted to eat better, but they truly didn't know what to do with some, like a sweet potato or an eggplant, or they just didn't know what to do with it. So I would go to their houses and I would help them. And then YouTube was kind of just starting at that point. And so my husband was like, why don't we film these why don't we make videos, and then you can just give them to your clients, so you don't have to go to everybody's house. They just have this bit of information. So we really started YouTube doing that. And then as the years had passed, I was like, oh, other people are watching these videos. And then you kind of like, oh, YouTube was becoming YouTube. And so then once my kids were both in school, we were like, hey, maybe we can do something with this. And now it's really evolved into, what it is now. And really so much of my intention on that channel is truly just to make healthy eating feel like a little bit less dogmatic for people, to let it feel simple and kind of fun and doable. And, I think for me, I know so many people who watch our videos they're either newer to healthy eating, or maybe they've come across some type of health challenge. A lot of people are like just either learning how to cook healthy or wanting to make some changes with their diet. And so I really just want to make it easy, doable. And I want people to feel like, I always think, I just want people to feel a little bit better, right? When you watch a video, when you're done, you just feel like I could do that. Or, I'm excited to eat that, right? Not feel like, oh, I have to eat something because it's good for me, but that you can see that it's actually easy to do, delicious, and doable.
Yeah.
I would say is the word that always comes to me.
I'm not surprised that your backstory is so authentic. That you were already doing this, and then it just captured this phenomenon of you already helping people, and like you've had success like for over a decade now consistently, which is also super hard in like the social media landscape, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's funny because I spoke to somebody a few days ago. It was more of like a business podcast, and I was laughing to myself because she was asking me some questions, and I'm like, I'm not super. I don't think very business oriented. I
Yeah.
definitely am much more passion driven. And, she was like, well, where are you going? And what's your end goal? And I'm like, I don't have any, I don't really think that much about it. I just do what I do because this is what if I wasn't, filming it on YouTube, I would still be doing this in my life.
Yeah.
This is how I spend my time. This is what I'm interested in. This is what I study. This is so to share it is just very natural.
Yes.
And so it's just kind of grown from there, I guess.
I feel like that's the key to your success, right? I also, it's like one of those oxymoron things in life where if you really want something, you want to become the biggest channel, have the biggest engagement, etc., make this amount of money. Like it comes across, and social media is so like authenticity driven that you end up just like not succeeding. Or that's my impression. I don't know. I'm not amidst
Yeah,
it.
I think you're right. Or you'll burn out, like
Yeah,
I
that
do
too.
think if you're doing this type of, whatever your topic is you really have to love it because it does take time, and, you have to be consistent, and you need to do it over. And I think there's also this fine line of being able to sustain, the content creation, that you have to be able to do what you love and not only what you think other people want. Otherwise,
Right.
you kind of burn out.
Right. One more question on this topic. I know we deviated a little bit from food, but do you have any advice for people that are looking for their life's passion? Like what, because it seems like you really found yours. Do you have any advice for people?
I think a lot of times, and I'm not saying this is always the case, but a lot of times our own personal, like our passions are born out of our own personal struggles, right? Because it's something that you're interested in. It's something you want to figure out. It's something that you'll spend time trying to unravel or uncover for yourself. And in doing that, not only do you garner a lot of information about a topic that you're interested in, but you also gain a really deep understanding of yourself and that topic, right? And so the more you understand yourself in that topic, the more you relate to other people who are looking for help in that topic. And so you are able to become like a very natural teacher, I feel like. So I feel like
Okay.
a lot of times that, I'm not saying it's always the case, but I do think often when people have like deep passions for something, there's usually some type of personal driver where it touches you in some way.
I love that advice. I'm definitely going to journal on it after. And
Yeah.
then I also want to talk about the format of a book. I love reading in general. I love books. So you wrote a book as well, titled "Clean and Delicious: Eat Clean and Get Healthy with 100 whole ingredient recipes." Why did you choose this format of a book?
We went with a cookbook because I mean the majority of our content on our channel I would say is 80% food and recipes, and a lot of people were asking me for a cookbook. You know, it's funny because we have a website and where you can access all our recipes and print them out, and we have YouTube where you can watch all the videos, but I think a lot of people still just like a book in their hand, you know. And
Yes.
for me, creating it, honestly, part of the fun for me is honestly thinking about having it for like my kids or for my grandkids, just to have something where we have recipes in there that we get to share with other people but also as like holds value in our own world.
Were you surprised by the reception and feedback?
Um, I guess, you know, I guess again, I didn't, I mean, people are so generous and, you know, like so positive and supportive. So from that aspect, absolutely. Um, but I think again, and it sounds horrible when I hear myself say this out loud. I don't think that much about it. You know what I mean? It's kind of,
Yeah.
I do it and then I'm always just thinking about the next thing we're creating.
Yeah. No, that doesn't sound horrible. I think that's like natural, actually. I also like, I always think about the masculine and feminine way of doing things. I think masculine is very numbers driven, objectives, and like not
Definitely.
feelings driven, intuition driven. I think because our world runs masculinely, we sometimes reject the feminine way. But no, like, I think that's amazing. Like, you're just trusting your intuition, what feels good doing, and you're seeing success as a result.
Yeah. Yes, I
Yeah.
do. I think in so many ways, so much of our success has really just come down to, you know, offering value and being consistent. It sounds
Yeah.
oversimplified, but that's really what it's been. Because
Yes.
it hasn't been like some big masterminds behind the scenes, you know?
Right. Yes. And then I want to also touch on the importance of whole ingredients. You talked about how, like, when your philosophy evolved to what it is now, that's like a central point of it. What do you see around you, like in a modern world, like that, like essentially violates that? Why is it important to like make meals with whole ingredients?
Well, I think for several reasons. I think one that nutrition can quickly become overcomplicated, right? And that really just getting back to focusing on real whole foods as the base of your diet can take away a lot of the guesswork that takes place when it comes to food and eating. It just
Can
keeps
I
it simpler. Yes.
can I actually ask you a preliminary question? Can you define what a whole ingredient is for people listening?
Sure. So I would define a whole ingredient of anything that comes from the earth or from an animal, essentially, right?
Okay.
Anything that comes from nature to
Okay.
me would be a whole ingredient, one
Okay.
word, right?
Okay.
So, yeah.
And what is wrong with eating something that is not whole? Like if I buy a package of something or a frozen meal and it has all these things in the back that I don't recognize, scientific terms, etc. What is wrong with eating those things consistently?
Yeah. So first, I would say anything is wrong with it, right? Like there's room for everything, and sometimes we're going to do that. I don't think there's anything wrong with sometimes eating processed foods or eating, you know, frozen foods or anything, right? Everything has its place.
Okay.
But I think that you don't want that to create the base of your diet simply because it's usually you're not going to get like, you're going to not get the nutrient density that you're going to get from real whole foods. You're
Okay.
not going to get, you know, the fiber, you're not going to get the micronutrients, you're not going to get the nourishment from highly processed foods that you are going to get from real whole foods. And I think from there multiple things can happen. you cannot be satisfied after eating. You can feel hungry. You may have enough energy in your body, enough calories in your body, but still want more food because you're not satisfied. Your body's not satisfied from, a nutrient standpoint. I think also when you're eating processed foods, then you can get into conversations about blood sugar and, how quickly, if these foods are highly processed outside of your body doesn't need to do a lot of work once they're in your body, right? So that's going to spike blood sugar levels faster. It's going to throw hunger feedback off. You're going to often feel hungrier sooner, just not as satisfied. I think it just makes it harder. Plus, a lot of processed foods are just more energy dense, right? So you could eat a lot more food and still like less quantity, but a lot more calories or energy and just not feel satisfied. So I think when you just jump over to whole foods, not only is it quote unquote healthier in the sense that it's more nutrient dense, but I think it can be a lot more satisfying, a lot more satiating. Plus, I also am a big believer that the energy in your food is going to be the energy that's in your body, right? So if you're eating something that has life and energy, you're going to receive that when you eat those foods. If you're eating foods that are just dead on a shelf, right, you're not going to get that same level of vitality and energy when you eat those foods. So multiple layers to it, but I think again, it's just it's a very simple way or it's a very easy way to simplify your nutritional approach, right? Is like just get on the playing field of eating real whole foods as the base of your diet. I remember even, I'll just say really quick, like back in the day when I was making these changes for myself, I would change, like if I wanted to eat candy, because I used to be a big like gummy candies like Swedish Fish and jelly beans and things like that, and I would swap it in for dried mango or dates or foods like that, right? So it was interesting to me because it wasn't a caloric conversation. It's not like the dried mango was any less calories than the candy, right? But it didn't drive the same desire to keep eating the way highly processed foods can do for some people. So that's another piece of the puzzle, I think.
That's interesting. I sometimes compare like when I'm in a pinch, like unhealthy snacks and healthy snacks, and I only look at the calories, but I'm gonna remember that because yeah, sometimes I'll make that comparison. I'm like, okay, then I might as well eat the Smarties, but that's
Yeah,
a
right,
good.
exactly. And listen, sometimes it works, right? Sometimes you might, and there's always a time you have that thing and it hits the spot and it's perfectly fine. But I think it's what we have to be asking
Yeah.
ourselves is what are we doing on a consistent basis most of
Yes.
the time?
Yeah, I love that. I also subscribe to that philosophy. Like, I think it's fine for me, for myself, or at least I've arrived at to have cravings. So sometimes, like maybe once a month, I'll have a craving for chips. Like, I have to have a bag of chips. So what I'll do is like I'll walk out of my apartment, I'll go to the grocery store, get a bag of chips and eat it, right? But I won't just keep like chips in my house, and it's so bizarre seeing like my friends and family just like set up these environments for them to like consistently eat
Yeah,
unhealthy even when they
that's
don't
such
crave it.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great way to say it. Like that's another great point is it really is creating an environment that supports your goals because it
Yes.
does matter. It does. And I know for like parents that can be trickier because you buy certain foods because to have for your
Mm,
kids that you wouldn't buy if it wasn't for yourself. But I think like your example is perfect. It's just if you really want something, then put it in, put yourself into a circumstance where if you want it bad enough, then you can go get it. But that it's not
yeah.
just something that can mindlessly happen,
Yeah.
that's in every cabinet.
Do you have some other tips for like setting the right environment or conditions to eat well?
I mean, I would say like keeping the foods in your house in alignment with your goals for sure. I'm also a huge proponent of meal prep. I mean, for me, it's a tool that makes eating well so easy. I mean, I think it's such a game changer, especially if somebody is, really busy during the week or they're just starting to shift their habits. Being able to just open your fridge and have a handful of options can make or break, what decision you're going to make or break if you're going to, pick up food on your way home or order something. I think really getting into the habit of having things on hand and also having some really simple, like 2-minute meals that you enjoy ready to go. Like not underestimating, something like making a quick omelet, right? Or like a protein smoothie. Things that can be like really simple that you might not think of for, say, dinner, but you're like, oh, who says we can't
Mm.
have that for dinner? And it's delicious, it's satisfying, and it helps to keep you in alignment with where you're trying to go with your healthy eating habits.
Can I dig in a little bit into your weekly meal planning? So, can you kind of walk through, like, from creating the grocery list, grocery shopping, and then how you think about your week? If do you think in weekly increments or like a shorter or longer time span?
I do. I usually meal prep once, one big one on the weekend, and then I might,
Okay.
like sometimes in the morning if I'm, packing lunches for my kids or something, I'll make some meatballs or, like something of that nature when I'm in the kitchen at like 6 in the morning. But I do a big meal prep on the weekend that does pull us through a good chunk of the week, gets
Okay.
us pretty far throughout the week. I mean, I will still like make weeknight meals, but I think about it in terms of vegetables and proteins. Those are like really what I focus on meal prepping, because those are the things that I find are like, I always have frozen rice in the freezer, and I always have sprouted bread ready to grab and go, and I always have fruits, right? So for me, the carbohydrates, I don't need, they come very easily. But it's the protein and the veggies that I always prep ahead of time. So, and it changes with the seasons. Like we always do we call it the weekly crudité. So my husband and I, it's like we've been doing it for so long. It's just like automatic habit. We just have a big bin of raw vegetables that we always keep in the fridge, and so that's just like grab for a quick snack. I'll just add it to anything. Chop up a quick salad. Um, even if I'm doing, say, canned lentil soup or something like that, I'll use those vegetables to just add a little bit of like life and vitality to dishes that I'm doing. So we always
What are
have that on hand.
what are those vegetables? I'm curious. I kind of want to copy it, but I'm worried they go bad.
Yeah, well, so for us, we do, and you can change them up. I wouldn't recommend doing like peppers or cucumbers or things like that are very, because you could also chop those in 1 minute anytime you want to eat them. But things that we always do in ours, we do cauliflower, broccoli, celery, carrots, and radishes. That's our go to.
Okay.
Sometimes I swap the celery for fennel, but that's pretty much our go to. And then we will both pull from that all week long, whether it's, adding them to something we're making snack plate for our kids or for ourselves. It's just always in always in our refrigerator.
Okay.
Um, Now that the weather is getting colder, I've been like really on like a roasted vegetable kick. So I've been doing roasted sweet potatoes and then roasted Brussels sprouts. And then I'll usually pick something like whatever I see at the grocery store that just looks good or seasonal. So we'll
Mhm.
have a few cooked roasted vegetables on hand ready to go as well. And then I usually just do a handful of proteins. Like we always have eggs in the fridge. Um, I always hard boil eggs because I love hard boiled eggs too, and I'll add those to 100 things, whatever it is, toast, in a salad. It's just an easy way, right, to have it ready to grab and go. And then I'll usually pick something like I might make some meatballs to have them. Like this week, I made Thai curry chicken meatballs, which were delicious. Um, and then we had a big bin of that in the fridge. Or I might just get some bison, like ground bison, and cook that up and have it ready to go. So it changes every week, but we always have like raw veggies prepped and ready to go, cooked veggies prepped and ready to go, and then, I would say 2 to 3 protein sources cooked and ready to go. And then we build meals
Okay.
off of that all week long.
Okay. I understand. When I think about meal prepping, I think about essentially those guys that meal prep where it's a container and it's broccoli, rice, chicken breast, and it's the
Oh,
same
right.
thing over and over again. But what you just described is like preparation, and variability. Like it's not the same thing. And I think speaking of men and women again, like I need variety in my food, just like I need variety in my like clothing, etc. I think food is a form of self-expression, and if I do
I
the same
agree.
thing rigidly, I just get sad. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I totally get that. And I agree with you. And that's the thing. You can, I think if you when you focus more on like ingredient prep, you can use those ingredients in so many different ways,
Right.
right? You
Yeah.
can build a taco, you can build a salad, you can make a bowl. There's so many different things to do with them. Um, but having them ready to grab and go is
Yeah.
so makes life so easy.
And it sounds so essential. Like in the past, maybe even just before this interview, I really thought the ideal was that you cook every meal. But you're a professional cook, this is your life, and this is a survival kit that the modern human needs essentially, which is like cooking these ingredients and planning ahead of
Oh
time, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I do not cook every meal. I eat home cooked food
Yes.
for I would say 90% of my meals, 95% of my meals.
Right.
Um, but I do not cook home cooked. It's not like every single night of the week I'm making dinner for myself and my family. There was a point in time when the kids were younger that I did do more of that, but now with their schedule, we're never even home and nobody's ever here at the same time. That's just like the
Right.
chapter we're in right now. So we always have like a Sunday family dinner, and maybe if I can squeeze one more in during the week, but otherwise it's slow cooker or meal prep.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. And then can we talk a little bit about the process of cooking itself? So there's the outcome of healthy, nutritious food, maybe the pleasures of the taste, but the process itself, do you take pleasure in like mixing ingredients,
Oh
seeing
yeah.
things sizzle? Do you romanticize that process? Do you ever like put candles, music, or anything, or company around you?
Definitely. Yes,
Yeah.
I love that. It's funny because that was literally the story of my life. Like when I was younger,
Mm.
before I had kids for sure. And then when my kids were young, absolutely. That was still like a huge part of my day and highlight. Like I looked forward to making dinner, always music, candles. It was an event, always.
Mm.
And it's funny because I'm definitely in a chapter of life right now where I don't do that as often because there's just like a lot of driving teenagers around. It's just a chapter that we're in right now.
Yeah.
But that is still one of my favorite things to do. I will say I probably get to do at least once a week on a weekend. Like to me, that's a fun night. Putting on some
Yeah.
music, trying a new meal, like making a like because I think we eat simple meal prep meals often during the week. I do love like a meal, where you're
Right.
making different components and you have different dishes at the table and you're taking some time to eat and talk, and it's not just like, okay, let's eat dinner and get on to the next thing.
Yeah, and the holidays are coming up. I bet that's a magical time, especially in your household. All the food,
Yeah.
aroma, and activity. That sounds amazing.
Yeah. I love that.
Um, and then I'm gonna kind of move on to more theoretical questions.
Yeah.
Why do you think people struggle so much with healthy eating? It seems like healthy eating is like the culprit to so many preventable diseases. We as a population are just so bad at it. Why?
Well, I think for multiple reasons. I think, for starters, that we are bombarded with like easy to grab food is not most easy to grab foods is not are not healthy, right? So
Yeah,
there's so much opportunity to grab highly processed, you know, tons of sugar, tons of fat, these foods. This is what's convenient. This is what's around most people. And it's habit. Like I think people are busy, they don't have a lot of time, they're doing what's easy. And a lot of time, what's easy are those foods because they're convenient or because it's just what you're familiar with. I
hmm,
also do think that there is a little bit of a slippery slope when you become accustomed to eating highly processed foods, that because the sugar content and the salt content and the fat content is so I want to almost say like assaulting to your taste buds, right? It's so strong that when you go to eat something that's quote unquote healthy or natural, it's almost like you can't taste it or appreciate the flavor of it, right? Because you're used to such loud flavors. So if you're used to eating highly processed food and then someone's like, "Oh, have an apple or some grilled chicken," right? It feels like boring and not enjoyable. So I
right.
think that, wanting to move towards eating better, you kind of have to start to pull back on some of those highly processed options to almost to reset your palate. Because I do think that like natural, delicious, whole, healthy foods are to me delicious, right? To so many people.
Yes.
But again, if you're used to eating highly processed foods, it's easy to feel like they're boring or they don't have a lot of flavor. So that's
Yeah.
one. I think two, a lot of people think that quote unquote healthy eating has to be boring. They don't realize how many ways you can approach, the culinary aspect of healthy foods. Like it's endless and delicious. And so sometimes I feel like it's just like learning a new language, right? You just
Right.
have to want to like pick up a cookbook that is showing you some of these dishes, and it doesn't take long to go like, oh, this is actually really enjoyable and easy and doable, and I just wasn't aware of it before.
Yeah, I was talking to a health psychologist and UI UX designer just a few hours before, and we were talking about how Uber Eats makes you think you want to order food. And we were kind of talking about like,
Interesting.
um, businesses, their incentives, and then driving unconscious behavior towards things people are not happy with. Like, no one likes using Uber Eats regularly, but they're dependent on it. Um, and then I also think about like a traditional supermarket. Like when I walk in, I'm just assaulted with all these unhealthy things first. Um, but then like I think about the onus of responsibility on the individual versus the market, right? Like the market is essentially trying to appeal to the lowest common denominator amongst people. And like food is a pleasure, just like other pleasures that people have. Like, a lot of movies, music, they appeal to like sexual things because that's what drives people. So food is so tricky because it is also that, right? It's like a pleasure that gets exploited constantly.
I mean, I could not agree more. And I think that the conversation of personal responsibility, it's important. And I wouldn't say it like I have a compassion for the challenge that it can be, but
Yeah.
it's like at the end of the day, this is the world we live in. And so you're either going to make a decision to, advocate for yourself, or you're
Mhm.
going to be a victim of the environment. And that's not going to change your reality, right? So it
Yeah.
like you could have that conversation all day long, but where does it get you? At some
Yeah.
point you have to make a decision for yourself to say, okay, this is how I am going to do it. And a lot of it is mindset, right? A lot of it is
Yeah.
making value-based decisions from the inside out that you have a level of conviction around, um, so that it doesn't feel so hard all the time.
Yeah.
That I think people like, I'm going to use fast food as an example because it's just something, my thought is like, I just don't do it. Like,
Yeah.
I don't do that. I don't eat at fast food restaurants. And it's not to say, ooh, that makes me better or it's good or it's bad. It makes my life easier to claim that thought process because
Yes.
it closes the tabs in your brain, right? You're
Yeah.
not like, should I just stop there
Yeah.
today? Because the answer is just like, oh, I don't do that.
Yeah. That makes sense. I'm also imagining like the imagery of like going to your supermarket checkout and they have like a column set for fresh fruits and vegetables that you can have as snacks, and then a column set for other things, right? I think it's like a chicken and egg problem with consumers and business, right? Because I feel like most consumers right now don't pick healthy options themselves. And if they start doing that more, then the market will respond, and then we'll have healthier environments around us. What is that grocery chain that's super expensive in California that's emerging? Erewhon, I
Oh
think
yeah.
Erewhon. Yeah, like
Yeah.
that's a response to like people's demands for like really healthy food, right? Even if it's
Yes,
like
for
super
sure.
expensive. So that gives me hope. But yeah, and okay, I kind of want to talk about food and discipline. Um, I know yeah, food is such a complicated topic, but like we just talked about how it is a pleasure in some senses as well, right? I
Oh,
think
for sure.
we yeah, it's almost politically incorrect to talk about food and discipline in a healthy way, not in a, you become bulimic type of way, which is horrible and terrible and it doesn't logically make sense, but to actually practice it in like a mindful way. What are your opinions on that? Do you think there is a relationship between food and discipline?
Yeah, I do, especially in the
Yeah.
society we live in today. I do.
Yeah.
And I think the way you view the concept of discipline will, determine whether or not you have a healthy relationship with discipline,
Yeah.
right? To me, self-discipline, it's self-care. It's about learning how to care for your truest needs, right? For your health, for your vitality, for your wellness, right? So
Yes.
self-discipline is about practicing aligning with the decisions that support your health and your wellness.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it is important to cultivate self-discipline when it comes to food because it's like we just spoke of, there's a lot of opportunity to eat out of alignment, let's say with our goals, right? It's all around us and it's easy to do. And even when it feels bad, it can still pull you back in, right? People get caught in these negative cycles.
Hmm.
So I do think self-discipline is it's like anything, it's a habit that you need to practice and to cultivate for yourself. But I think when it's not viewed as something that you have to do and you see it as something that you do for yourself, it
Yeah.
makes it a lot less it takes the negative energy off of it.
Have you ever done any practices like fasting for like essentially the spiritual food esque? Because when you fast, I did a yoga retreat or mindful and silent meditation retreat, and I just became so in tune with how food felt because there was
Mm,
nothing, no other distractions. Um, and yeah, like it's so amazing. In the past, like people of the past, this is why they would fast, right? So they become really in tune with like food and stuff facts, not in like a negative way, but in like a enlightening way. And I'm
yeah.
trying to figure out different ways to like cultivate that, in a healthy
Yeah.
way.
I mean, I think I think for just the average person who maybe doesn't have the time or to say, or the desire to do like an extended fast or to go away and meditate or with food, I feel like a really simple practice is simply just slowing down
Mm,
your the pace at what you eat, the pace at which you eat, and the amount of time you give yourself to eat a meal. Like
yeah,
that can be a very bite-sized practice that most people can incorporate at least for one meal a day that can really help you reconnect and get back in tune with your body.
that's amazing advice. Although increasingly we can't seem to eat without staring at a screen.
Totally, I know. It's so true.
Um, if someone wanted to start today and like transform their eating habits and start to cook and eat healthy, what's the biggest piece of advice you would give them?
I would, if they were going to start today, I'm a big believer in focusing on the quality of your food choices that you make, right? So instead of trying to uphaul everything,
Okay.
trying to level up what you're already doing. I'm a big fan of, if you're somebody who's like, I just love eating pizza on a Friday night. I love the concept of saying, like, well, how can I level up that pizza eating experience? Whether that's going to, a local pizza place who puts a lot of love into the pizza they make, or adding some spinach or mushrooms to the pizza you usually get, right? Just instead of trying to tell yourself, like, all the things you have to stop doing or you shouldn't be having, asking yourself, how can you level up and how can you incorporate more real whole foods into the decisions that you're making, right? So it's kind of like that crowd out thought process where instead of eliminating foods, we're adding more of what we want and just allowing the rest to kind of slowly get pushed aside. So it doesn't feel like you're going into this internal battle with yourself.
Okay, I love that. And then I'm just gonna ask you some rapid fire questions to like end the interview. If you were to label the diet that you follow, what would you call it right now? I think I can guess
Uh,
whole ingredient.
yeah, I would say like what people call clean eating, but for me, it's just
Okay.
focusing on real whole foods most of the time.
Okay. What are the usual items on your weekly grocery list?
Oh yeah. So I always have, like, I would say like the top 5 or 10 things that are always in my refrigerator. I always have some type of sprouted bread. I always have eggs. I always have like a Greek yogurt or a cottage cheese. I always have fresh berries. I'm like, oh, where? Right now is always sweet potatoes. You will always find cooked sweet potatoes in my refrigerator. I'm obsessed. Um, Another favorite of mine, I mentioned it before, is like ground bison is one of my favorite, like easy grab and go protein options. So you always find that. Big fan of bananas, big fan of nut butters. I can keep
Nice.
going, but those are staples. Oh, canned fish. That's another one. Like
Canned
canned
fish.
salmon, canned mackerel,
Okay.
jarred mackerel, tuna, all of those I love. And I like nowadays you could get so many fun variations, and I think they can often get overlooked, but they can be really great like options for good high quality protein sources that are insanely convenient. So that's another one of my favorites.
Okay, nice. I'm definitely running to the grocery store after this and grabbing these things. You kind of alluded to new things you're incorporating, but have you incorporated anything new, seasonal, you're excited about or planning to incorporate?
I usually just like, for instance, right now, my last time at the grocery store, I picked up a couple of pomegranates because those were new at our grocery store and in season, and I got a bag of cranberries that I plan to use, and which I'll probably bake with or put in. I'll probably put them into my oatmeal. I also saw somebody on Instagram make like she made an oatmeal with cauliflower rice, and then she put in cooked cranberries and like nut butter. So that is in the back of my brain to try. So yeah, that's
Nice.
what I've got. Those are my latest and greatest seasonal finds.
Awesome. And then what's your go-to meal when you're super tired or overwhelmed after a long day?
One of my absolute favorite meals is I take my cooked, so I will take sweet potato and like roasted Brussels sprouts. They're already cooked and in my refrigerator, so they're very quick. And then I top that with a big fat dollop of cottage cheese, and then I'll cook like two over easy eggs, a little bit of everything bagel seasoning.
Oh my
It's
God.
like a 4 minute meal, and it is to die for. So simple and so delicious.
Is that recipe up on your channel or your socials?
No, and you know what? It's funny because I don't think of that as a recipe. I think of that as like a quick assembly, but maybe I should put it on the rest. Maybe I should make that.
Okay, I think I will leave our audience with that last imagery. uh, Thank you so much, Danny, for joining. This was such an enlightening conversation. Um, yeah, any last notes to the viewers? Where can they find you?
Thanks for having me. You can find me at Clean and Delicious, whether that's cleananddelicious.com. That's great if you want to search and print recipes, or you can find us on YouTube, cleandelicious.com, if you're more of a visual gal or guy and like to watch the full recipes cooked all the way through. That would be the place to do it. And I also have a digital course and membership called the Don't Diet. It's where I help women build a kind, sane, sustainable approach to health and permanent weight loss. So that's for people that are still working on building that healthier relationship with food and body as well.
I had a cart to get into all of that, but we ran out of time.
That's okay.
Yeah,
I know it's a lot.
also check out your book as well. I placed an order, so I'm excited for it to come. I love like the
Aw.
separation of function. Like this is a recipe book that I have in the kitchen that I look for use for recipes. So I love that you published the book.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Danny, and thanks for
Thanks for having
everyone for
me.
listening. I'm gonna